Hey guys, it's Kelly back at ESP at Elite Soccer Performance, and we are back for session number 2. Today is Plyos and explosive. So last session, in session 1, we worked on strength, which is going to be our foundation for our Plyos and explosiveness today. And we are working on our box jumps. We have some body weight movements. So today's focus is going to be on explosives in a small area with minimal equipment, and that way you can get a lot of people done in a small time, in a small space. So usually when you do these plyo workouts, you don't want to give any athlete a lot of plyos to do because you want to focus on the technique and you want to make sure they have good quality and good form. So what we're doing is we're training the type 2 fibers, and we are going to be doing it in a couple different ways. You can either do it for time or you can do it for reps. So if you're doing an explosive movement for time, you're training their speed endurance, and if you are doing it for reps, you are focusing on 100% power, and when you're doing that, you want to give the athlete a little bit more rest time. So today we're going to start with our warm-up. I'll be explaining why we're doing what we're doing, and then we will move on to different progressions today. So as you saw in our last session, it was more of a workout, and I was explaining to do this many rounds of a timed exercise. Today I'm going to go through more progressions of different types of movements, such as boxes, with bands, shuffling, body weight movements, all of that kind of stuff. So it won't be as much of a workout as demonstrating progressions to go through with your athlete and why you go in that order. So with that, we will start our warm-up, starting off with 10 jumping jacks, nice and easy. Go ahead whenever you're ready. So doing this, we're just warming up the body. The first few movements I do are usually just to get them going, warm up all the muscles. Then you have 10 claps, start all the way out and all the way in. So you are going to be warming up the muscles really quick, getting the blood flowing, not doing too much, nothing too heavy yet, nothing exerting too much energy, and then cross jacks, cross in the middle, 10 times still. Good. Then we're going to go 10 squats, feet shoulder width apart, all the way down, all the way up. Keep that core nice and tight. Go ahead. So here we're getting into a little bit more of some strength movements, getting those quads ready, the hamstrings, the glutes, everything activated and ready to go in a plyo session. Especially when you do plyos, of course, it's always important to warm up, but plyos are a lot of explosive movements, as I talked about before, and you really want to make sure that your muscles are ready to go, because in explosive sessions, a lot of the times, that is when people will pull a hamstring, their groins, hips, anything like that. 10 lunges, 5 each side. So we did some squats, working on bilateral movements, warming up those muscles, and then I'm going to have her do some lunges. That way she has some unilateral work. A lot of sports and athletes, especially goalkeepers, are going off of one leg a lot of the time, so you want to make sure they're ready to go. And we are going to do jumping off of 2 legs and 1, so you want to make sure that both legs are equally warmed up. And if the athlete ever, before I do an explosive session, ever feels anything is sore, is tight, you want to make sure you ask them beforehand and make sure that you cater that session to that athlete and what's happening. Because a lot of times if an athlete is sore or tight, doing anything explosive and powerful, sprinting, jumping, anything like that, they could potentially tear something or hurt something and make it worse, and you don't want that to happen. All right, same thing all over again, 10 jumping jacks to start. So I usually have them go through it twice, just because once they're getting warmed up, they're getting ready, and then their second time they're going through, they're warm now, they can go a little bit quicker, their muscles are getting ready to go, and then we'll go onto the ground and we will start doing more activation exercises. So when I do a strength workout, I'll have them do this warm-up plus some other maybe upper body exercises. However, when I do speed and plyo sessions, I really focus on more of the lower body, hamstrings and glute area, because that area seems to not get warmed up as much by many coaches and teams, depending on who's doing the warm-up properly. So after she does this, I'm going to bring her down to the ground and we're going to get the glutes and the hamstrings more. Good. So notice how when she's doing this, she did this before, so she knows, but one leg is going forward, the opposite arm is going up, which we always want to practice because that is proper form when we run. We want to make sure we always use our arms and our legs. Her core is staying nice and tight and her chest is staying nice and high. Perfect. Now you are going to go onto the ground on your back and you are going to do 10 glute bridges. So feet are going to be flat on the floor, toes face forward, have your feet about shoulder width apart. Good. And you're going to drive those hips straight up to the ceiling 10 times. Good. So in this movement, you really want to teach them to drive their hips straight up to the ceiling as high as they can, really squeezing their butt and their hamstrings. And I believe I mentioned this last time in the warm-up, but notice how her feet are nice and flat on the ground. I don't want her toes in the air because when you have your toes in the air, what happens is it activates the muscles that she's using in a different order. And I want her feet flat on the ground, which activates her muscles in more of like when she's using them, when she's running and jumping and all of that stuff. It activates them in that order instead of a backwards order when you have your toes up. And then you're going to go single leg, so 10 each side. So same thing here that we did with the squat before. We did a bilateral movement with 2 feet down, and then I had her do lunges, which is a unilateral movement, and now I'm having her do the same thing here, unilateral on one leg. Same idea, warms up the muscles together at first, and then you go into them separately to make sure that each side is activated properly. Good. And notice that her hands are down on the ground. So if an athlete has trouble doing the single leg one, you can have them put their arms on the ground to help stabilize them. If they're completely comfortable with it and they're very balanced, they can take their arms off the ground, which will activate their core more, and it'll be a little bit harder. Good, keep that foot nice and flat. And then you're gonna roll over onto all fours to a fire hydrant. So she's going to be on all fours. Her wrists are right underneath her shoulders. Her knees are right underneath her hips. And she's going to lift one knee up to the ceiling as high as she can, 10 times on each leg, keeping that back nice and flat and core nice and tight. So right here we're working on a lot of things. We're warming up the shoulders a little bit, creating that stabilization. Her core is nice and activated, keeping her back nice and flat. Her glutes are working to keep that leg, the one on the ground, is really activated, keeping it stable, and then the other glute is working on lifting that knee up into the air, nice and controlled. And notice how her back is staying flat the whole time. So a lot of athletes will go too far and their back will start to turn. You want to make sure you go to where the athlete is mobile. A lot of coaches will say maybe go straight up to the ceiling and make sure that it's parallel with the floor or the ceiling, but you don't want to strain the athlete. Every athlete has a different mobility, so you want to make sure they go just about to where their back is starting to move, and then that's where they should go. So now you're going to do forward circles. So you're going to go up towards your elbow and then around. Perfect. So same thing here. We're activating the glutes 10 times each side. You can do forward circles or backward circles. So if she was going to do backwards, she would just start the opposite direction and go away from her elbow and then end towards her elbow. She's still warming up the glute and her adductors and abductors on the inside and outsides of her legs. And then of course we still have that core and shoulder activation as she's going. Good. Now you're going to do a straight leg raise, so legs straight back. Good. And out to the side. Perfect. So here she wants to make sure she keeps her arms nice and straight. See how the first couple reps she was starting to bend them? You want to really activate that leg and core, leg that's on the ground, and your core is staying nice and tight. That way you could really activate that glute. Good. And you really, especially the first couple times, don't want to rush through the warm-up ever with athletes, because you want to make sure that they're really warm and ready to go in the session. And the more warm-ups you do with all of this kind of stuff, the more they'll understand, the more they'll get it, and the more they'll do it properly. So the first couple times it might take a little bit to go through the warm-up, but it was 100% worth it to make sure they're properly warmed up. So you're going to do the same thing, but now your leg is going to be straight back to the wall and your toe is going to face the floor. Perfect. Squeeze that butt and lift up 10 times. Perfect. Good. So this one especially, another one, athletes tend to bring their leg up really, really high because that's what they think they're supposed to do, but really let the athlete know to try not to let their leg go any higher than their back can stay flat. So as soon as they start to feel their low back cave in, that's the limit and that's where they should be going. Good. Perfect. And then the last one I have athletes do is laying on their side. So lay on one side or the other, it doesn't matter which one you start with. So their bottom toe, the legs are going to be stacked on top of each other just like she has. The bottom toe is going to be pointed towards the shin, and then the top toe is going to be pointed down towards the ground, towards the middle of her shoe. So here, and then this one's going to be down towards the ground. Perfect. And then she's going to lift her top leg up 10 times. Good. So this is going to activate the abductor on the outside of the glute. You really want to make sure that your abductors on the outside and your adductors on the inside are also ready to go, because when you're doing plyos and explosive, those muscles are also regularly used, especially if you're going side to side. And you want to make sure the athlete is ready to use that. So this exercise is working on their abductors. Also as well, you notice that I told her to keep her bottom toe towards her shin. That's activating all of your muscles in your ankles and your shin. So when you run and do plyos, your toes will be up towards your shin, which is the proper technique in order to be the most explosive and make sure you don't injure yourself. So the last one I'm going to have her do, she's going to be on her side still. Legs are stacked on top of each other, and then her top leg is going to come up. You could hold the top leg however you feel comfortable, and then the bottom leg is still pointed towards that toe, and she's going to lift that bottom leg up 10 times. So now she's working on her adductors. So right now on the inside of her right leg, that is where she's working right now, and before we were on the abductors. Good. You'll notice that this, especially the first couple times, might be difficult for athletes. On the abductor exercise, they might not be able to point their toe really far down to the ground, which is okay. Again, go as far as they can. Every athlete is different and has different mobility, so as far as they can go is okay. You just want to try to make sure the athlete is in a straight line the whole time.